Welcome everyone to the April meeting of the Warren County Board of Supervisors. Please rise while Supervisor Simpson leads us in the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Leggett?
Here.
Mr. Diamond?
Here.
Mr. McDevitt?
Here.
Ms. Bramer?
Here.
Mr. Loeb?
Here.
Mr. Driscoll?
Here.
Mrs. Frazier? Here. Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Ms. Hogan?
Here.
Mr. Dickinson?
Here.
Mr. Merlino? Mr. Stroud?
Here.
Mr. Weil?
Here.
Mr. Beatty?
Here.
Mr. McGowan?
Here.
Mr. Sokol?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Ms. Hyde? Here. Mr. Garrity?
Here.
Chairman Conover?
You should all have received the minutes of our March 16 meeting. The Chair will entertain a motion regarding the minutes. Ms. Bramer, Supervisor Bramer on the motion. McGowan in the second. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Here.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if you would bring your microphone down lower, please. We hang on every word you say.
I
We wanna
know,
make sure you hear.
I'm flattered. Without objection, I'd like to offer the privilege of the floor to the New York State Sheriff's Association.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Peter Keogh from the New York State Sheriff's Association.
Welcome, Peter.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Welcome again.
Thank you. Yes, it's my great pleasure to be here again on behalf of all the sheriffs of New York State to once again recognize and honor Sheriff Bud York and all the men and women of the Warren County Sheriff's Office, this time on the occasion of reaccreditation of the Public Safety Answering Point. Only 14 of the public safety answering points in the state, and I think there are over 200, have been able to qualify for PSAP accreditation. So obviously this is no easy accomplishment, and it's something for which your Sheriff's Office and you folks should be very proud. And this comes on top of accreditation of the Sheriff's Jail, the Sheriff's Civil Division, and the Sheriff's Law Enforcement Division, accreditations which have been earned from the New York State Sheriff's Association and from the New York State Law Enforcement Accreditation Council. These are great testaments to your Sheriff's Office and clearly demonstrate that your Sheriff and your Sheriff's staff are dedicated to the pursuit of excellence in their profession. You have an outstanding Sheriff's Office that's well respected across the state for its professionalism, and the citizens of Warren County and you, Board of Supervisors, who are responsible for the financial support of the Sheriff's Office, should be very proud of this office. And today we focus our attention on the PSAP and the Sheriff's Communications Division, which is the lifeline of all of the emergency responders in Warren County. Your PSAP receives over 55,000 calls a year. They dispatch for 24 fire departments, 14 EMS, the Sheriff's Office, the Glens Falls PD, the Bolton PD, Lake George Park Commission, and the New York State Police. So I think we should just imagine for a minute the stressful job that we ask these communication specialists to do, to receive calls from a distraught citizen, often multiple calls on the same incident, and try to juggle all of that, and try to calm the distraught caller, to elicit the information that's needed in order to determine who to dispatch to this call, and to give that distraught citizen instructions to try to mitigate whatever's going on until the first responders can get there. And then to determine which of the many options for first responders are needed at this call, and then to expeditiously get them to that call. This is a very tough job, and it's important. Lives and property depend upon them doing their job right, and that is why the Sheriff's Association spends so much of its resources and its efforts on our PSAP accreditation program because of the importance of that. PSAP accreditation is not something that's available just for the asking. To achieve accreditation requires that the Communication Division meets a very stringent set of standards developed by experts in the fields of public safety communications. These standards currently have 38 major components with hundreds of minor components under those. And to gain accreditation, the PSAP must submit itself to scrutiny by an outside board of assessors who determine whether or not your agency has met these many stringent standards. And I'm happy to report that the assessors which reviewed the operations of the Warren County PSAP tell me that it meets or exceeds every one of those standards. So again, this is something which your county should be very proud. I want to congratulate Sheriff York, Under Sheriff Lamry, Supervisor Jeffords, and all of the men and women of the Communications Division for this accomplishment. And I also want to congratulate the Warren County Board of Supervisors and the citizens of Warren County, because without your support, your moral support, and your financial support, this achievement and all the other good work that's being done by your sheriff's office here in Warren County would not be possible. Of course, accreditation does not just happen. It takes a lot of hard work by a lot of people, but there are a few people in the sheriff's office I want to recognize for their particular contributions to this accreditation efforts. So at this time, I'd ask Communications Supervisor Larry Jeffords to come forward. And congratulations to you and all your efforts and for the great operation. Senior Communications Officer Brian Engel. Is Brian here? He's probably working. He's on vacation. Senior Communications Officer Lisa Mansfield. Lisa? Thank you for your good work. And one more. Senior Communications Officer Derek Helms. Derek? So once again, Chairman Conover, I want to thank you for this opportunity to publicly proclaim the good work that's being done by your sheriff's office here. And at this time, I'd ask Under Sheriff Lamry to come forward and receive this plaque on behalf of the sheriff's office. Under Sheriff? Congratulations.
Although I'm the one receiving the plaque today, the credit for our reaccreditation truly goes to the people that stood before you just a few minutes ago. They worked tirelessly throughout the year. They met no less than 1 day a month throughout the calendar year to work on the files. It's tedious. It's very time-consuming. And I just want to remind everybody, the people that work in the Communications Center, as Peter already mentioned, they are the unsung heroes. They are the people that answer the phone when somebody's having a crisis. Whether somebody's house got broken into, you've just been involved in a personal injury accident, they're the ones that are able to get the information they need to get the assets and resources to help people, whether it's any time of the day or night. They're the people that will walk somebody through CPR instructions. Somebody's never been trained in CPR before, but they'll give those instructions over the phone. They've also recently, I'm sure you read it in the paper, that they gave instructions to somebody and somebody was able to deliver a baby. That was about a month ago. These people are true professionals, and we're fortunate that we have people of this caliber working at the Sheriff's Office. Thank you.
Chairman's report. Extremely busy month. Committee meetings on the 1st, the 8th, the 19th, the 20th, the 26th, and 29th, not to mention other meetings associated with county government. On March 22nd, I attended Inter-County in Essex County, and they, where there was a presentation on their by their EMS coordinator on their plan and their efforts on establishing countywide EMS. It was extremely interesting, and I brought that plan back and shared it with the committee along with some other material, and I believe we're going to have them in for a meeting here in the not-too-distant future to talk to the committee directly about their plans, because I think there are a lot of parallels and a lot of comparisons to be made with what we need to do here in Warren County. I believe it was the 11th, I met with Walter Young of Lake George, Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board to advise him that he should plan to attend our monthly meetings for the foreseeable future and to address any and all questions associated with that organization. And then on April 18th, I attended a presentation in Bolton by Bob Freeman, who is, of course, Executive Director of the New York State Office of Open Government. I'm happy to say that our county attorney and assistant county attorney were there as well, and very strong representation out of Chester and a few other communities. And of course, this is the second time we've had Bob visit us to do this in Bolton, and I hope that perhaps we can have a presentation like this annually, especially for our clerks and those that are the gateway of the FOIL process. I think it's very helpful, the information that he provides. And that concludes my report. Report by the County Administrator.
Good morning. I have 3 items to report this morning. First, it is my privilege to recognize Mike Colvin, our Director of Information Technology, on a milestone that he celebrated last Friday, April 13th, and that was the 20th anniversary of his employment with Warren County. We all sincerely appreciate your hard work and dedication, and we wish you continued success. Congratulations, Mike. Second, an update on my activities. I assumed this position on April 9th, Monday. This is my 10th day. I've been very, very busy trying to meet with as many people as I can, get around and see as much as I can. It's like drinking from a fire hose, of course. I have met with Yeager and Flynn, the county's health insurance consultants. I've met with Larry Paltrowitz, our labor counsel. Met with Ed Bartholomew, the EDC president and CEO. I've met with Gina Minster, the executive director of the Lake George Regional Chamber and CVB, as well as Kristen Hannafin, who works with Gina. I met with Lillian May, the executive director of the Legal Aid Society, and her fiscal director. In addition, I'm doing my best to have individual meetings with department heads. We did have a department head meeting on Tuesday the 10th, my second day. Where we spoke briefly to the department heads. I've met, I think, just about every one of them. I've had longer meetings in my office to discuss their priorities and some of the things I'd like to try to do with about a dozen of them, about a dozen of the department heads so far, so I'm methodically working through that. In terms of my travels, I have been over to the Human Services building. Met a lot of the department heads and staff over there. Went up to Warrensburg, toured the DPW administration building and the DPW garage, saw the Tony Pit, saw the fish hatchery. I met with Edward Corcoran at Countryside, had a very nice meeting, and he gave me a tour of his facility, which I enjoyed very much. From there, also went down to Queensbury and Glens Falls. Saw the DPW facilities down there, the recycling center that's leased by D&G, and stopped by the airport and took a look around the airport as well. Some of my activities, in addition to what I've been through, I participated in an ISAC call reviewing the state budget, final enacted budget. I mentioned the department head meeting. I've had a good amount of supervisors spend some time with me as well, and I would like to just emphasize that my door is open, and I hope to have that opportunity with every one of you to hear from you what you think that I really need to be focused on right out of the gates. So I look forward to having those conversations, and I'm pretty much constantly working on preparing for committee meetings to figure out the rhythm that'll work there, and I look forward to doing that. My third item, just a report which the chairman requested that I give to you this morning. Last weekend there was a power-related incident that's still being investigated as to its cause, and which resulted in the failure of the UPS system at the Prospect Mountain radio site. Now, the UPS system is a critical component to our emergency communication systems, and its timely repair is essential for public safety. As such, Chairman Conover and the county attorney have authorized the Sheriff's Department to get the ball rolling on a replacement UPS system, which is going to cost in the neighborhood of $22,000. The Sheriff's Department intends on bringing this item before the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee meeting next Tuesday at 9 a.m. And Chairman Leggett has been briefed as to what we know so far. We're continuing to gather details, including whether there's a possibility of insurance coverage for this expense. We're still trying to figure all of this stuff out and get as much information as possible to the committee for Monday's meeting. So with permission from the chairman, I'd like to invite Under Sheriff Lamray to the podium to give you all a brief synopsis of this matter.
Without objection. Under Sheriff Lamray, how are you? Good to see you again.
So last weekend, during the storms that were passing through the area, we lost the simulcast site up on Prospect Mountain. We have multiple simulcast sites around Warren County. We have one here at the Municipal Center, one in Luzerne, one on Prospect, one in Warrensburg, one in Gore, one in Hague. Prospect covers probably the largest area, and at one point was our only transmit site. So what happened is there's a uninterruptible power supply up there. It failed. They don't know why it failed, but it also serves as a surge protector to protect the hundreds of thousands of dollars in radio equipment up there. And the radio equipment is for police, fire, EMS, and the Department of Public Works. We were off the air for approximately 2 hours just on the Prospect site, so that did affect the ability of agencies that are primarily served by that tower site. When our technicians got up there, along with technicians from Capital Digitronics, they found that the unit they think it may have taken a surge, but they really don't know at this point in time. The unit that was up there is somewhere between 14 and 15 years old. We just put brand new batteries in the unit about 2 years ago. When the unit failed, the generator should have kicked on up there, but because of whatever happened, it basically burned up the computer in it. The generator never kicked on, so our people went up. They were able to get it back online, but it's running right now. The tower site's back online, but probably one of the biggest and most important features that UPS system provides is surge protection to all the radio equipment up there. Right now, everything's running, but there is no surge protection on there, and that's obviously a concern for us. We've been working with Amy Clute in self-insurance, providing her with all the information that we have, working with the county administrator, working with our committee chairman, Supervisor Leggett, to get this rectified. And I'm certainly willing to answer any questions you might have about it.
Mr. Dickinson.
According to what I have in front of me, it's going to take about 4 weeks to get the parts. And we were off the air for about 2 hours up there.
All righty. Thank you for the report. Mr. McGowan, Supervisor McGowan.
Sean, does that mean so when we have a power outage, you'll have to go manually up there and hopefully that nothing's burned out and manually turn on the generator?
I believe that's the case right now, because we're running in a like a bypass mode is the way it was explained to me.
Okay.
And just so you understand, the UPS system is designed to provide power from the time we lose power from the national grid until when that generator kicks on up there. So that could be anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute. The system is just not functioning right now. Go on.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
In my eagerness to hear from our new county administrator, I missed the board, but we'll start with Supervisor Simpson for a committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to welcome our new county administrator. I'm glad he actually got a chance to speak before I did, so that was okay. Okay, DPW did meet on March 20th, and we have a number of resolutions that came out of that meeting. We have Resolution 176, which is authorizing an agreement with Clark Patterson Lee for periodic engineering services. We had Resolution 177, which is an agreement with Bell and Flynn for cold in-place pavement recycling, the hammer mill process. 178 is awarding a bid for application of pavement markings. Number 179, I'm happy to call your attention to. It's appointing Kevin Hajos to be the Superintendent of Public Works, and I think we have an awesome candidate for that person. We have Resolution 170 or 180, which is authorizing the standardization of the purchase of fish food for the Warren County Fish Hatchery. And Resolution 181 is amending the fee schedule for Up Yonda Environmental Education Center in Bolton. We also had a Public Works meeting on March 29th where Mr. Ellis from Saratoga North Creek Railroad came and spoke to us. We had tried to communicate with him without very much success previous to that, but he agreed to come, and we wanted to speak to him about the contractual issues that we've had where we haven't been paid and we haven't had reports, and we really didn't know where this stood. Well, we heard from Mr. Ellis. He is unable to pay the money that is due on the contract, and also has told us that he is done with that contract. Moving forward, the county administrator and the county attorney have been looking through this issue and taking the contract and identifying an outline for us to move forward on various issues that are related. It's a complicated issue, being a railroad owner, and we want to make sure that we're moving forward in a comprehensive way that covers all the issues that we need to solve. So that will happen Tuesday at the next DPW meeting. Then we're going to peel away the issues. We're going to deal with the contract first. That'll lead us into the next phase, where we go from here now with the contract. I don't know if anybody has any questions on that at this point. So that's Tuesday, so I look forward to seeing everybody there. The next report I have is Cornell Cooperative Extension. And every year they have a golf tournament and silent auction. It's on Saturday, August 25th. It's their 9th annual tournament. And the proceeds from this are really critical to, those monies are used towards all the educational programs they work on throughout the county, which is just amazing. I have the information for it. If anybody wants to assemble a team or get involved in any type of sponsorship or, want to attend for the silent auction, I have the information. And Dr. Seeley is here also. I'm sure he can hook you up with more information and some applications. With that concludes my report.
Thank you. Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you. No report, but can I say something to dovetail off of Supervisor Simpson?
By all means.
I had the great pleasure of spending last weekend with a bunch of team leaders from all over the state out in Syracuse. They were 4-H participants. And the value of these programs cannot be stated strongly enough. Please support the Cooperative Extension Golf Tournament. And, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the Cooperative Extension. They do so much. I'm still exhausted from the weekend, but it was amazing. And their programs are incredible.
Great comment. Supervisor Dickinson.
Yes, I managed to miss the real property and environmental concerns meeting. Fortunately, Matt was there in my place. You have 4 resolutions in front of you. They're mostly bookkeeping, moving money around, taking money in. I also sit on the Warren County Commissioner of Jurors Committee. Wanda Smith is the commissioner. She's responsible for developing the jury pools for all the trials, and this is their annual report. It's a meeting that takes usually 3 to 5 minutes, and we managed to squeeze it in under an hour. The Honorable Judges Muller and Hall are on that committee. what I wanted to do for all of you is highlight the Commissioner of Jurors' job in relation to our jurors, our legal system. For 2017, she sent out 7,700 questionnaires to develop a jury pool for the coming year. They stay active, that jury pool, for about 18 months. She keeps it small so that she can keep rotating the pool and keep it fresh. From that jury pool, they get jurors to respond to a total of 49 trials last year. 49. And 10 grand jury panels. The Supreme Court had 3,262 people. The Supreme Court had 375. Town and villages had 385. So it's an important job. It's a difficult job. I'm sure you're all familiar with being called in for jury duty. But she does a great job, and it's very interesting, and I appreciated that. So lastly, environmental concerns. We are working, we as in Claudia Bramer, is working on a plastic bag resolution. And what we're trying to do is come up with a resolution that is palatable to you, Warren County, so that we can then take it to inter-county and hopefully get the county backing. We brought it up last month's meeting at inter-county. By and large, they were against some of the issues. The present recyclable bag ban comes out of New York City. They have some different concerns than we have up here. It's still an issue, plastic bags, but they're looking at a lot of different things. And one of the things that the North Country people objected to was the ban on paper bags as well. So Claudia has, Supervisor Bramer has drafted a paper bag resolution. It's available. If you're interested at all, I hope you all are. It's an easy read, and it's an interesting topic. It has a lot of far-reaching ramifications that you don't normally think of when you think of plastic bags. So if you would do that, it will be coming in front of you soon, hopefully. And hopefully we'll be able to take it to inter-county and get a resolution that we can send to our legislators in Albany and see if they can get something done there. That's it.
Thank you. Supervisor Merlino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tourism met the few things that we're just talking about. We sent out a newsletter Wednesday. I hope everybody had a chance to read it or try to read it. It's got a lot of information in it. The Smith's travel report for March was up 15.3%. The Smith's travel trend for year-to-date, January to March, is up 7.5%. The next committee meeting, we're trying to get an early one, and with nobody in front of us, so that we don't have 2-hour delays on our tourism meetings, to help out the business people that sit around for an hour or hour and a half sometimes waiting for our meeting. So next one is 10:30, and I think the only thing in front of us is real property, and so that should be no problem. There's going to be some information shown on Webmaster that we have on Google Elastic, and media presentation by Ad Workshop. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Legislative Rules Committee met on March 26th, and we have 4 resolutions before you this morning. Resolution 172, which opposes New York State Department of Labor's call-in pay regulations. The committee discussed the issue with representatives from the Lake Shore Chamber of Commerce, President Fred Vogel and Executive Director Gina Missner. What it is currently it's set up is if you have a call-in, you get paid for 4 hours.
Well, what's being proposed is if you do a call-in, it's mandatory that you pay for 6 hours. And the committee was convinced that this would be detrimental to the tourism industry locally. Now, it may apply to other jobs that aren't so common in this area, and maybe that's appropriate, but the way the resolution was being submitted to the Assembly and the Senate, we thought was inappropriate. A Resolution 173. It opposes the proposed elimination of the minimum wage tip credit. In other words, what this resolution, the way I understand it, was trying to do was impose a situation that we saw Davidson's brothers try, where the waiters or waitresses would not get paid their tips, they would get paid a minimum wage and so forth. And it was the consensus of the committee and from our experiences that, you know, our waiters and waitresses in our area generally make more than minimum wage. So I want to thank all you good tippers and keep it up, but we oppose the proposed elimination of the minimum wage tip credit. Resolution 174 supports the proposal to increase DEC forest rangers and the staffing to 175. We felt convinced that the current staffing of forest rangers in the Adirondack Park was inadequate. Even 175 could be argued to be inadequate, but we would support bringing them up to a number of 175. And Resolution 193 sets a public hearing that will be held May 15th at 6 p.m., which, as you notice, is different from our usual Board of Supervisors meetings. And there'll be a public hearing on a proposed law. The proposed law is a municipal opioid cost recovery and public nuisance legislation. And I think it's important enough for me to share some of this with you. The opioid epidemic is sweeping the country. The cause, or a cause, of this increasing crisis is the overabundance of prescription opioids. The selling, distribution, prescribing of large amounts of opioids in our community has created a public health and safety hazard affecting the residents of the county. The crisis has devastated families, wreaked havoc on our economy, produced a generation of narcotic dependence. As a result of the opioid epidemic, costs related to health care, family and social services, criminal justice, addiction and rehabilitation, and many other areas have significantly increased. Many of these costs are paid by the county. So the purpose and intent of this legislation is to allow the county to recover these costs. To accomplish this, the county establishes this cost recovery procedure and declares the opioid epidemic and its effect on the county a public nuisance. So we're having a public hearing on this proposed law that I just gave you a brief idea of what it's about, May 15th at 6 p.m. And that is it as far as committee reporting.
Thank you. Just I'd like to turn to the county attorney relative to the opioid resolution.
Yes. After discussions with Supervisor Loeb both last night and this morning, I was going to suggest that the board actually withdraw Resolution 193 of 2018. Supervisor Loeb made some very good points in regard to the medical industry, and I think that the law should probably be revised and then taken back through the committee process.
I think we need to discuss that. I mean, there may be a number of different ways to proceed. We could proceed with the law and then amend it later at a later date. We could, as a suggestion. But, Mr. Chairman, I would defer to you.
As chairman of Legislative and Rules, upon consultation from the county attorney, I would agree and make the motion to withdraw Resolution 193 from today's action.
We have a motion to withdraw it. Mr. Dickinson on the second. Any further discussion? Supervisor Bramer.
I guess I would like
I was hoping that we would hear from Supervisor Loeb about some of the concerns.
I think,
But I don't have any objection to withdrawing, so that's fine.
Supervisor Loeb can
Yes,
address
yes.
this, perhaps during your committee reports, you could,
Okay, we'll only take a moment since we're talking on this topic. Would that be appropriate?
without objection, sure, go ahead.
In reading the law itself as proposed, there were some lack of definitions, and a big part of the law is to identify those responsible for the epidemic, and there's probably a feeling that, well, this is the manufacturers are selling and pushing these drugs, but in actuality, what we say in the law are the sellers, distributors, and prescribers. And what that would do is put us in a position of focusing on accusing perhaps one of our, or any of our medical professionals, the doctors, the PAs, nurse practitioners, our pharmacists, as prescribers, sellers, and distributors. And I don't think that's what the intent. I understand the intent in general of this law, but those specific aspects are not the intent, that we want to attack our local professionals. I think what we like is that everybody does their job properly. We see in the paper today that actually in 2017, I think the distribution of prescription drugs has dropped 20%, something like that, 15% nationally. So that's a good trend. But the wording in this law is totally inadequate as far as meeting the intent of what we have.
All right. I would concur with Supervisor Bramer and the chair that I don't see the harm in kicking this back, withdrawing and kicking it back to committee if changes are required here. I think that's, I'm not sure that we have any need to have to do this in 30 days, but Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My only comment is that what I heard is there is an opportunity for the public to present their thoughts on this issue. Next month is an evening meeting, which will allow many more people to attend versus Friday morning. And I'm wondering if we can still keep that public hearing for next month.
I mean, the issue there would be that we don't have a specific piece of legislation that to react to, other than some general sentiment on the issue. But I would defer to the consensus of the board. Supervisor Bramer.
I was going to say we could still move forward with the public hearing on this proposal and amend it as a result of comments at the meeting and from Supervisor Loeb during committee. I don't know if that's appropriate, though. Maybe the county attorney can chime in. I don't know exactly how many changes Supervisor Loeb has. If they're so significant that it makes this one meaningless, then maybe we shouldn't go forward with the public hearing.
That was the second option that I outlined. But Mr. Driscoll, Supervisor Driscoll.
I'm new to this, but if we table the resolution next month, can we then have the opportunity to have the public hearing?
Yeah, no, the resolution itself sets the public hearing. The motion that's on the floor is to withdraw and not to table. I just want to make that clear to everyone.
All right.
Anyone else wish to discuss? Let's deal. Supervisor Dickinson.
I think we should get the resolution squared away before we set public.
Well, let's get a sense of the board regarding this and the motion that's on the floor. All those supervisors that support the motion to withdraw signify by, let's try raising our hands. Let's try it this way. Opposed? When the motion's carried. Thank you, everyone. Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, although I don't chair any committees, I have been very actively involved with meeting with leaders in the community as well as within the county team itself to try to really get a good understanding of all the different moving pieces that we have. And as many of you heard me say before, a lot of our decisions come with consequences. And I'm working quite hard to make sure I understand all the different pieces and I thank you for the opportunity.
Welcome. Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you is a proposed floor resolution. It's stated as number 1. It was handed out to everyone. This is on rescinding Resolution 133, which was the Lake George, Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board, which barely passed last month. And I'm asking that we rescind that resolution for a number of reasons. Obviously, they're going through some challenges right now as to their loan funds and a number of other issues. I can tell you that I personally met with Mr. Young, who's the executive director of this regional planning board last week, and he was less than accommodating and giving me any information at all about how they operate, how the loans are handled, and so forth. But I learned he knows 2 words, which is foil it. He said that to me 5 times. So that's a little discouraging since we as a board have oversight over this Lake George, Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board. We, as well as 4 other counties, have jurisdiction over them. So I'm going to ask for full support on this, and we'll see where the rubber hits the road. But we can always go back and approve the Lake George, Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board at a later date. But right now, with so many issues with this board that are unanswered, so many questions, it's imperative that we back away from our approval of them and until all these issues have been fully addressed. So I'm not sure, I think when we get around, Amanda, you'll put a number to it or whatever?
We will.
Okay. On a side note, shared services did not meet, although Claudia Bramer and I did meet with Julie Butler. We discussed just a few side issues and I think next month we'll have a shared services committee meeting, and we're just trying to get our feet on the ground of what other things are important and that can save significant money as a committee in the shared services aspect. And I know our new county administrator, Mr. Moore, would like to participate in some of that. I saw an email he sent me, and I appreciate that. So at this time, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor McGowan.
No report. I just want to welcome our new county administrator, and looking forward to working with you in the future here.
Likewise, thank you.
Supervisor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance met first on March 29th. Resolutions 151, 152, 188 through 192, 194, 195, and 199 are all in your packet for your consideration. Treasurer Swan, who usually steps to the podium, will not be here today, but he did address the committee and warned us of our spending again. We have to be conscientious because the 5-year business plan that's laid out doesn't look too nice. So, however, on a good note, the first time since 2009 we will be investing in CDs. Right now, the money market is not as strong as the CDs, and the rates are increasing with CDs. So we're going to invest in that. It was also noted that sales tax collected in 2017 was 2.2% higher than 2016. Also, occupancy tax collections were up 3.7% in 2017 as opposed to 2016. I would like to draw your attention to Resolution 192 in your packet. Unfortunately, we are in the day and age where it has come to the point that we need law enforcement services at some of our school districts. Hadley Luzerne has taken the first initiative to do this, and they are asking that Warren County Sheriff's Office has a personnel there for the school year. This amount is not to exceed $60,000 for the given school year, but what it does, it allows an officer to be there 8 hours a day for the 180-day cycle. One of the questions that was brought up is, what happens during summer school, but this will require further discussion as well as probably further funding. Also on March 29th, I did read a statement in regards to some of the issues that had occurred with Resolution 133, and at the end of the meeting, I did volunteer myself to be reviewed by the Ethics Committee, and that was filed the very next day. I called the County Attorney's Office to do so. And for those of you that did not read the paper yesterday, or was it today? I'm not quite sure I have it online, but I just wanted to read a paragraph here. After review of Warren County Ethics and Disclosure Law and the opinion rendered by a Warren County attorney dated March 28, 2018, we agree with the opinion rendered by County Attorney that there was no conflict of interest when Supervisor Sokol voted in favor of Resolution 133 of 2018. However, in the future, in an abundance of caution, we recommend that Supervisor Sokol abstain from any votes related to funding of the Regional Planning Board. So, with that being said, I will abstain today, but I just want people to understand that this was for my parents, not me, as the paper continually puts it in a family. It's actually my parents' loan. But this, whether I voted yes, no, or abstained, they probably would have received the loan anyway. This has turned into my issue, and I just want to apologize to a lot of the supervisors here, to the staff, and also to the public for their time and troubles in this matter. We also met on April 11th, and this was necessary because we needed to identify a source of funding in the amount of $100,000 to pay the settlement for the Gillette versus Warren County case, and it was decided at that point in the committee that we would appropriate those funds from the general fund. So that is Resolution 194. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Sokol. Supervisor Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item that I have for our report today is to remind supervisors that the county purchased a vacuum excavator with a grant that was obtained by the Soil and Water District, and that's a 75-25 matching grant. And as the county purchased it, we have to make the match, and the match can be done by our highway department using the vacuum excavator and documenting their time and expenses. And we need to create some more match so we can fully reimburse the county and close the grant out. The second thing also deals with soil and water. The hydro seeder, the Soil and Water purchased a new hydro seeder this past year, and it's available to all the towns. As you do ditching work or work around your parks or whatever, they'll come out and hydro seed the bare dirt to prevent erosion. The third thing also deals with soil and water. And, this past Wednesday, I traveled with former Supervisor Montesi to Cortland to attend the New York Association of Conservation Districts meeting. The association is made up of 8 regions. Ron is he's on the state committee for conservation. I am a district director or a region director of Region 5, which goes from it's 5 counties from Warren County to the Canadian border. We had a good meeting. Met a lot of people around the state, and but it's a long ride. On April 10th, I attended a health insurance meeting with some people in Yeager and Flynn, a detailed, in-depth look at our health insurance and how it's tracking the expenses and what we can do to reduce it. These meetings will be quarterly to create incentives and manage our health care costs. Also, NISAC has projected that the inflation factor going for the 2019 budget currently is about 1.8%, a little better. So we'll see what the comptroller decides what it is. The sales tax currently is up 2.2%. 2018 at this time over last year. That's $240,000, which is a very good thing. Hope it maintains. Also, NISAC is projecting the 911 surcharge on prepaid devices and services. The State Department of Taxation has started collecting these fees. Just about all the counties have enacted local laws to have these fees collected. It's going to be collected similar to sales tax, and currently it looks like that they're going to pay the full amount back to the counties. I guess I'll believe it when I see it, considering it's 911 money. But if they do, the first payment will be about $50,000 to Warren County. I do believe the closing of the 2017 budget is close at hand, and as soon as that happens, I will schedule a budget meeting to look at the year 2019 and look back at 2017. I think it was supposed. And the last thing I have is the May 15th meeting on Tuesday. You know, it's nice. I don't have a problem with the evening meeting, but I have a town board meeting that night, and if that remains, I won't be here. So.
Yeah. And you're being very kind. I know last year it was a conflict with Mr. Garrity. I'd ask Amanda that you log all the town board meetings in that whatever month, if it's May, we have scheduled a meeting that we know in advance when it's a conflict with the town board meetings. They're all on a prescribed day of the month. Ours is the first Tuesday other than on an election month. And I'm sure all the towns have very specific dates when they meet. And if we could know that when we set the meeting date, perhaps we can avoid someone else from being skewered in this fashion. Mr. Thomas, I know you take great pride in your attendance here at these meetings, and our apologies to you. Supervisor Hyde.
No report.
Before I call on our friend from Warrensburg, I just want to say, Kevin, your service to this county, the time and effort, it's just unbelievable stepping in as the acting county administrator. All of us owe a great deal of gratitude to you for doing that. Being chairman, I had a front row seat, so to speak, as I think the other chairs of the committees, and I can, from the bottom of my heart, really thank you for your service to Warren County. And with that, I think this man deserves a really and now something I haven't had to do for a couple of years at least, Supervisor Garrity.
Yep. Finance Committee met twice, March 29th and April 11th, and we have two resolutions, 186 and 187, that came out of our committee meeting. I'd like to remind all my colleagues, I know this is a topic Ryan and I have talked about. Performance evaluations are due, so please try to get them in the next week to Jackie. Also, I'd like to say that I've had the pleasure of working with Ryan since April 9th. We've spent many hours and put some miles on going around the county, and I think he is the right choice, and I'm very pleased that the committee and the board have appointed him as our next as our county administrator. Also, I'd like to note that we've had four major department changeovers since January, and after today's meeting, hopefully after today's meeting, all of the appointments will be completed for a while. And again, I want to thank the board and the Finance or Personnel Committee for working with me to make the right choices. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Moore as administrator as well. Good to have you there. Criminal Justice Public Safety Committee met on March 20th. There's 8 resolutions before you, numbers 154 through 161. 5 of them concern contracts and agreements. 3 of them concern grant applications, and 1 concerns the support of a consolidated council at arraignment plan. On the contracts, they're fairly straightforward. The grants are from Homeland Security. for emergency services. And then the last one is on that consolidated action plan. We'd like to thank Judge Hobbs for pulling that together with the help of some of our departments, Flores specifically from our defense prosecution there. And would also like to thank Glens Falls Police Chief Lyon and Sheriff York for their working together for a cooperative arrangement that allows this plan to move forward. What we're being asked is to support this, and then it goes off to the state for review, and it's on their final whether it gets accepted or not. Two other things to note. One, during our committee meetings, it was brought up to us about what raise the age might do. And while it's still all being figured out, we can expect that we will have added expenses at the county level for the state program. Also would like to thank Brian LaFleur and the Office of Emergency Services, as well as the Sheriff's Department, for the service that they provide when needed most in the emergency. When we have outages, power outages, and things like that, we are fortunate to have such good departments.
You're welcome. Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your packet today is one resolution, 153, amending resolution in 2017, number 314, authorizing a continuation of the agreement with Cornell Cooperative Extension for a lease agreement of extension on service buildings and to approve construction of a standalone greenhouse and pole barn to amend the lease agreement to include both structures. I'm anxiously awaiting the support of the board on that particular resolution. The facilities meeting met in March. We talked a little bit about the subject of our Warren Street building, an opportunity to tour that. There's currently a tenant in that building, which the lease agreement has expired, and we've been working with the county attorney on developing a strategy on whether we want to renew, renegotiate. That will be the subject of discussion at our next facilities meeting. I'd like to also announce that the building has been retrofitted now for 3 weeks, so the Department of Office of Emergency Services, the building is anxiously waiting for your equipment to come down and be stored in that building. On the same lines of the facility, we, as everybody knows, the fixed-based operator contract expires at the end of this calendar year. We send out an RFQ, then we responded back to the interested parties with an RFP. I'm happy to announce that we have 3 respondees that came back in on the deadline. Copies of those respondees are currently for the committee members. You should have a copy. I have a copy here. I haven't reviewed the content at this point in time, but we will be having a discussion in our next facilities meeting in regards to the response. We do have a significant amount of work to get done. I'm happy to think that we'll be able to achieve some sort of a discussion or negotiations in the next coming months. In regards to that, I think that right now in discussions with the county attorney, we're reviewing the document, the document. I also want to thank 3 supervisors that have decided to undertake the responsibility of representing the county in regards to the upcoming negotiations. That would be Supervisor Sokol, McDevitt, and Beatty. They have volunteered their time to sit down and hammer out a new agreement, if it's possible, with our responders. Other than that, I welcome everybody to attend the next facilities meeting to have additional discussion on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Supervisor
Chairman.
McDevitt.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. The couple of quick issues. Seems like some issues, specifically I'm talking about the Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board. 2 characteristics that are very, very important. It's something called public trust and believability, and I would hope we could somehow expedite the process of trying to get to a resolution. What appears to be occurring now is we have a committee meeting, and we have my Economic Growth and Development Committee meets on Monday, and Mr. Young is going to be back, and then it seems like nothing happens for 30 days, and we're back to another supervisors meeting, and then another committee meeting, and we're not moving fast enough to, I think, ensure that we're not on the front page of the newspaper, and that we're securing the underlying, theme of trust and believability. So just looking for a mechanism that we could just move a little bit faster on that issue. Maybe consider, I'd be happy to spend some time, if Mr. Young is available, if their auditor's available, that we just get to a point where we're not on the front page of the newspaper when it comes to this issue. I suspect in the final analysis, this group does many good things, but let's just kind of move it along. And then the second issue would be with the Meals on Wheels program. Okay, I want to thank the ladies and gentlemen from the Cedars and the program for attending. I guess you must just love come to public meetings, and I thank you for that. I would hope we could move this issue along as quickly as possible. I would sincerely hope we could kill this issue, okay, as it relates to any changes in their program. Tip O'Neill told me one day, he said, Peter, there are two things in life that you have got to remember when it comes to politics. He said, number one, don't lie to the FBI, and number two, don't mess with your senior citizens. So thank you.
Thank you. V. Tip O'Neill? V. Tip O'Neill. I'm impressed. Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you with that. I do want to thank Supervisor Garrity for all of his time as administrator, and welcome Mr. Moore. I wish you the best of luck getting your feet on the ground. I don't chair any committee, so I don't have a committee report, but I do want to report that I did attend the Crime Victim Rights Week breakfast that is hosted by Warren and Washington County. Supervisor Driscoll was there as well, and it seems fitting to report that a 911 call operator from Warren County was honored that day for her services helping the gentleman up in Hague when he was in a serious situation, and he survived. So he was honored that day as well. But it was really a meaningful thing, so I hope you guys get to attend next year. Thank you.
Supervisor Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Support Services did meet. I had a short meeting in March. We met with IT, Mike Colvin, and so there is a resolution about that in the packet today. But in the meeting, and every time I come up here, I'm reminded on a regular basis of the quality of the staff that we have working for us. Our department heads do a great job, and the staff that work for those department heads do a great job. We do a lot of work in this county, and the least amount of it being done is right in this room. It's the people out there who are servicing the citizens of Warren County. So I'm very proud of that. In our Human Services meeting, our chair, Supervisor Frazier, has asked me to do some work with the meals program, and I applaud, as Supervisor McDivitt, I applaud the citizen activism. When I was on the council back in the 80s in the city, we never had this many people come to a meeting. So I think City of Glens Falls should come up with something to get people out. So thank you very much. What I'm doing with the meals program is this. As you know, and I've said this before, under the heading of good government, responsible government, and open government, we have to do the best for all of the taxpayers in Warren County. And we haven't made a decision yet. But personally, I guess we're just going to we haven't made a decision yet. But at the last meeting, there was discussion about how these meals are being funded. And one of the major points that was brought up was that Bolton, the county taxpayers across the board pay into this program. The individual senior citizens who receive the meals pay in tens of thousands of dollars to this program. And specific town taxpayers, town of Bolton, town of Chester, town of Johnsburg, and Lake Luzerne, all pay extra money into the meals programs. Glens Falls and Queensbury do not pay extra money in, and in an implied request from Supervisor Strauch, I'm going to come up with a number which I'll present at the next Human Services meeting as to what would be a fair and appropriate number for Queensbury and Glens Falls to contribute to support their part of the program. And that's my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a report. I do want to let folks know that Supervisor Hogan was also at that crime victims breakfast, and again, as Claudia said, next year try to make it. It's really inspiring, and it really recognizes the efforts of men and women throughout Warren County on their good work. I want to mention that I met yesterday with our new Department of Social Services Commissioner for about 45 minutes. I encourage other supervisors to meet, especially with our new department heads, to get to know them, and outside of the interview process, to learn what their concerns and issues and how we as a board can assist them in following through with their individual department missions. I did the math, and I think we've got 50 resolutions to vote on today, but I wanted to just recognize and thank the county for proclaiming the proclamations of Law Day, May 4th, and Mental Health Month and Older Americans Month. I think it's important that certainly we do the business of making sure that money is well spent, but also in recognizing important issues that impact all of our citizens, and certainly the Law Day, mental health, and older Americans are issues that all of us at some time in our lives are going to be impacted by. So thank you.
Thank you, and I would mention that I had asked Supervisor Bramer if she would present our proclamation for Law Day, and she graciously agreed to present that. I believe it's a morning breakfast, and so thank you, Claudia.
Yes, thank you.
Last but not least, Supervisor Frazier.
I'm here. Thank you.
I know.
Health, Human, and Social Services met on March the 19th. We had reports from Employment and Training, Social Services, Office of the Agent, Office of Community Services, and Public Health. As a result of those reports, we have resolutions 166 through 171. One is a memorandum of understanding. Another one is authorizing an agreement. Second one for authorizing an agreement. Authorizing agreement for Patricia Ellman to provide occupational therapy. Another one authorizing Lindsay Maresca to provide occupational therapy. And the last one is ratifying the actions of the chairman of the board in executing the reapproval application of the provider agreement between Warren County and New York State Department of Health Bureau of Early Intervention. And I'd appreciate your support on that. And I would like to kind of echo what Ben said about our new department heads. I think Chris Hansett in Social Services and Janelle Jones in Public Health are kind of settling in nicely, but it would be nice, especially on the committee that we sit on, to just stop by and let them know that you're interested and that they have your support. So thank you.
Thank you. Report of the county attorney.
I have nothing further to report.
No report from the county attorney. Reading of communication.
Report of criminal and family workloads for February 2018 from the Warren County Probation Department. Warren County Department of Weights and Measures monthly report for March 2018. Warren County Commissioner of Jurors annual report for 2017. Minutes from the Warren, Washington County CDC meetings on February 26th and March 14th, and Warren, Washington County IDA meetings held on February 26th and March 14th. Warren County Jury Board annual meeting held April 5th. Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board minutes from their August 27, 2015, December 17, 2015, August 25, 2016, December 21, 2016, August 31, 2017, and December 20, 2017 meetings. We received letters from the Warren County Democratic Committee Election Commissioner Certification Form recommending Elizabeth McLaughlin be appointed to Office of Commissioner of Elections for a term beginning January 1, 2019. That's reflected in Resolution Number 196 in your packets. We also received the Election Commissioner Certification Form from the Warren County Republican Committee recommending that William T. Van Ness be appointed as Office of Commissioner of Elections for a term beginning January 1. That's also on Resolution 196. And we received the February payment in the amount of $3,569 from the Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting Court.
Reading of resolutions.
Proposed resolution number 151 through 196 were mailed after mailing resolution numbers 152, 155, 175, 186, and 191 were amended. The revised resolutions were emailed to the board and posted to the county website. Copies of all of those resolutions are in your folders. A motion is needed to approve the amendments to resolution numbers 152, 155, 175, 186, and 191 as presented.
Motion to approve amendments. Mr. Dickinson, Mr. McDevitt. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, proposed resolution number 197 through 199 were developed after mailing. Copies were emailed and posted to the county website. Printed copies are in your folders. A motion is needed to bring 197 through 199 to the floor.
We have a motion, Mr. Dickinson. Ms. Bramer on the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
There's also a document entitled Proposed Floor Resolution Number 1 in your packet. That's the item that Mr. Beatty had spoken about. Is there a motion to bring that to the floor?
We need a motion to bring that to the floor. Mr. Beatty, Mr. Simpson on the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That will be brought to the floor under resolutions.
And it's now resolution number 200.
The number on that is 200.
Could I have a roll call vote on that too, please?
I'll be calling for roll call, but yes, we'll take that right now. There will be a roll call on 200. You all set?
That's it for me.
All righty. Discussion, and I'll open it up to the audience. Discussion on any pending resolutions. Mr. Whitehead.
Travis Whitehead, Queensbury. I'd like to bring to your attention resolutions 194 and 195. 195 is a resolution asking you to appropriate $10,000 as the county's share of what damages, I guess you would say. There was a horrific accident up in the North County on a county road. A settlement of $500,000 plus litigation expenses was paid out, and the county share is going to be $10,000 after the deductible. Also on resolution number 194, quite different number there. You're being asked to look at $100,000. This case is the one regarding Mr. Gillette. In addition to the $100,000 you will be asked to approve today, there is an additional $50,000 that will go to him over the next several years. A guardrail that will be furnished and installed by the county, and the litigation costs that were both internal and counsel that was hired. An estimate is probably over another $100,000 on that. My question is, why the difference? Why don't we have? Why aren't we just paying a $10,000 deductible? And why do we absorb all these other significant costs? Can someone answer that for me?
I think I'll allow the question. You want to respond? Why we? need to pay these costs in terms of our insurance?
Sure. Is your question whether there is insurance coverage or why isn't?
Why we're not getting reimbursed for a lot of this expense by the insurance company?
Under Gillette versus Warren County, the insurance company didn't cover the claim. They said there was no actual occurrence that precipitated the event. So they're saying because there was no negligent act or something like that, it's not covered under our insurance policy. So that's why they're not covering the state action in Gillette versus Warren County. There was insurance coverage in the federal action. However, that was stayed until the state action was taken care of. So when we settled the action, it settled both actions, but the insurance company wouldn't put any money towards it because they said the federal action had never reopened.
Thank you. And this has been ongoing for many years. I would think that it was apparent to us that we weren't going to get this settlement fairly early on. And fairly early on, I don't believe that Mr. Gillette was asking for anything more than the boulders to be put back where they were. So, we ran up a considerable bill. The taxpayers paid a considerable amount of money and will continue to pay a considerable amount of money to actually go after another taxpayer. And I think this is something that you should all consider, whether you should be using the might of our own money to go after ourselves. And it's unfortunate that this happened. I think there are other cases that one pending right now actually, that you can think about why you are using the resources of this county to go ahead and try to recover or try not to pay $100, a couple $100 requested, and instead you have Mr. Reichenbach on contract and billing you at quite a rate, which you are paying for. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Yes, ma'am.
This piece of paper was actually a thank you that I wrote in hopes that maybe the situation would be resolved for the Meals on Wheels program. I do not understand why it's being carried on so long. It's causing a lot of problems. The people that work in this kitchen they're constantly, their nerves are on end. They don't know if they're going to have a job tomorrow. And I really don't think this is fair. What do you need us to do to resolve this? No question.
I think what you're doing now, speak your mind. Speak your mind.
I don't think you really want me to. Maybe I'm
whether you believe it or not, yes, speak your mind.
Okay.
I do want to hear.
This is a big committee, and many of you have come over and visited us. You've talked to all of us. We've given you our input. What else do we need to do to have you decide that this is the right thing for the senior citizens and to have it here at the Cedars where it's the best program in the state? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
We had another speaker, but he had to leave, so.
Would you like to take his place?
Of
course. By all means.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Virginia Winters, and we just feel that this is being dragged on so long. I know it's not important like a lot of these big issues are, but it is causing a lot of problems with our work staff at the Cedars. They don't know from one day to the next if they've got a job, who's going to walk in and say, tomorrow you're done. And we just don't feel that it is fair to them. And we also would like to know where we stand as residents of the Cedars, because we can get somebody else in there, but we don't know whether we should try or what to do. So, I mean, it just seems like this small issue is dragging on much too long. And we're wishing that sooner or later that an answer would come up to it. I think the sheriff and the EMTs have left, but we at Cedars really want to thank them for their services because they are at our place quite often, and we'd like to say a big thank you to them. Thank you.
Thank you. I just might add, I think you've delivered your message today most effectively.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Could you state your name, please, for the record?
My name is Kelly Tyler. I'm actually the property manager at Cedars, so I just wanted to come here today to not only support my residents, but just to thank Brad McGowan, Edna Frazier, and Bill Loeb for meeting with my supervisor from Vermont, John Hunt, and I last month in March. He gave us an opportunity, some really great dialogue to discuss what Cedars could do to help. John and I both feel that the request made was a little out in right field, left field, but we're certainly willing to, work with the board to what we can do to keep the program here. We really value it. It's a huge part of our community. It's been that way for 15 years. But I echo the sentiment, of the residents here. It's frustrating. This has been, I think, announced, January? We're now approaching May. I appreciate what Mr. Loeb said about the county doing their parts. Everybody here does their part to make this county a really great county, and then it's pushed to you guys to do your job, to do a good job, to maintain open government. And I think all of you do a fantastic job, but we really would like to put this issue to bed. It's spending a lot of my energy to field questions, get information, and unfortunately the information isn't always accurate information, so we're all spending our time, our energy, finding out what's accurate and what's not. So we would really appreciate a resolution as well. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anyone else wishing to comment on resolutions presently before us? Yes, I would extend the courtesy of the floor, of course.
My name is Beatrice Didio, and I live at Cedars. I'm also a volunteer, and I can tell you personally that this has been horrendous for the staff, for the people. Others have mentioned that they can bring in other programs. One suggestion was that they could have an evening meal, but that's a great expense, and I don't know how that can happen. I will tell you, working with these workers at the staff at the kitchen, they're hard-working, dedicated people, and they are under a tremendous amount of stress. I do feel that, having worked under some great managers in my life, that if there was more open communication with the manager of this department, Meals on Wheels, perhaps things would not have come to where they are today. I do feel that she lacks communication skills, and that's my personal opinion. But I've seen what happens. I'm there every day volunteering, and it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And as the others have mentioned, dragging this on for so long, I mean, every single day. And these meals, you mentioned, Mr. Loeb, that people come here just for this meal. Those meals weren't even mentioned when I moved in here. And for what you get, it's a great nutritional meal, but it's certainly not the reason to move in there. And for you to ask for them to pay $75,000, $50,000, for advertising, I think that's silly. I just don't see the sense in that. They don't have that kind of money, nor do we. So anyways, I do implore that you think this over very carefully. There are seniors here that depend on that.
Ms. Frazier.
Well, all I'd like to say is I think at this point we are no longer pursuing the policy of doing anything with Washington County. I would just like to put that out there. That
I'm
we're
happy.
Not pursuing that
I was hoping you would.
Right.
I think that
Well,
that's.
thank you very much for your time.
I think that's
Right.
terminated, that idea.
Right, we're not exploring that possibility at all anymore. And
All
I know
right.
at our meeting on Tuesday, we'll try to, figure out what direction we'll go.
Edna, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. Supervisor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I personally want to apologize, and I'm sure I speak for the board as well. We don't like to put stress on you people. However, the way things work up at the county is we meet once a month. Unfortunately, the bulk of the committee work activity happens once a month. This just reminds me of the dealings that we had with Countryside many years ago, and talk about pins and needles. We had we don't always make the correct decisions here, so we want to take our time with us, and hope you guys can bear with us. Tell your staff that we're working on it, and we want to make the correct informed decision that we possibly can. Countryside, I think, lingered on Kevin for years, right? Talking about possibly... Right, so...
We won't be here.
All right, thank you for your remarks. I'll now ask the supervisors for a request for roll call. We have a request from Mr. Beatty on 200. Are there any requests?
No, I wanted to respond to one of the comments from the public.
All right, I apologize.
No.
And then we'll end it. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Dennis.
If I waved my arm any higher, I would have flown away. It's taken me 6 years to get to this point where I can say I told you so. It's been an arduous 6 years. I realized when I started this that I was new on the board. A lot of the supervisors and family are now gone, and some of you that are still here didn't know me. Mr. Whitehead is absolutely correct about the Gillette situation. As much as I rarely agree with him, he's absolutely correct in this one. And the reason we paid so much is because we did so much bad. The three principles from this board that instigated this movement are no longer here. One of the principles that supported me in my efforts is no longer here. But for the rest of you, I will tell you this. We went up the county and encroached on one of our county residents' place of business, dismantled the structures of his place of business just prior to his opening for business, loaded some of his personal property onto our county vehicle, and drove away with it. It was just mind-boggling to me. I have been in the surveying business for 50 years. 50 years. And I pleaded with them in the cold and in the rain on site not to do what they were doing. But they were determined to do it, and they did it even with my pleas. And this is the end result. They did exactly what I told them they were doing, and this is why we're paying. We're paying. Truthfully, for what we put Mr. Gillette through, I'm not sure that's nearly enough money for all the gangs. And he was a gentleman. I'll tell you, he was a gentleman when they did that. I'd have been livid. I ought to have ended up in jail, I'm sure. But he sat there calmly controlling himself while he dismantled his business. And I'm glad that he prevailed on this lawsuit. It cost him a tremendous amount of money. Hank, I hope that it's stupid again.
And Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. Well, on that note, I think this raises to light the issue that we get sued all the time. I mean, there are suits happening all the time, and we don't hear about them unless we read them in the paper. Or 6 years later, we're being asked to fork out money for a settlement. Why do we not know sooner when we're being sued? I mean, maybe not every single inmate lawsuit brought against the county jail, but there are things happening all the time, and we, as a board, do not indicate to our county attorney how we want to handle them. Maybe there's some that we don't have a lot of control over because they're handled by our insurance, but there's others where we should be paying attention and we should at least know what's happening and how we want to respond to the lawsuit against our own citizens.
Supervisor Bramer, the point is well taken. I argue with the county attorney, I argue with the county chairman. Adamant, continuously. It was a known fact. I mean, in the early stages of it, and I was there the day they did it. And I argued about it until it was too late. And nobody paid anything. Didn't have anything.
We need to
move on.
we need to move along. We can discuss it on the resolutions if you like, just a point of clarification, not this chairman.
No.
Speak. All right. A request for roll call. We have one request for 200. Supervisor Loeb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 156.
156.
161.
161 roll call.
And 172.
172 roll call.
173.
And 173 roll call.
Thank you.
Any other requests for roll call? Supervisor Thomas?
183.
Roll call on 183. Any other requests for roll call? There being none. Discussion on resolutions. Supervisor Garrity.
Resolution 200. I fully agree with Doug on this. I think it's a shame that we have to vote on this resolution today. I'm disgusted with the whole thing and how we got there on this. This may have seemed to be a good plan for those who needed it. I personally feel violated by some of our elected officials, maybe not Mr. Sokol, but from other counties. When elected officials get relatives to get money from a loan fund that is somewhat tied to counties, I think it's totally wrong. I guessed when I heard that there potentially could be other elected officials. I just don't think it's right. I think we ought to look in the mirror, and if we have any one of us has anybody tied to anything that's dealing with Warren County, we ought to say it, and we ought to at least bring it to the county attorney's office, and we ought to make it known. Now, that's on 200. I'm sickened by it. You know, it's one thing to give out loans to people who need it. I'm not sure about that, and I would love to see the loan aging report from them, but I would like the loans identified, not with initials, not with surnames or anything. I want to see who's getting these loans, because this is not right. It's not right, and it taints every one of us in this room, whether you like it or not, because we're all elected officials, and now it looks like it's going to reach into 2 other counties that we know of, and potentially more that we don't know about. So I've had enough of it, and I won't support this organization going forward. I've just had enough. Number 2 is on Claudia's question about lawsuits. We used to get briefed on the lawsuits going forward. So I think most of the board prior to a couple years ago would know about the lawsuit. The one in Hague, I think we were briefed upon several years ago, because it's been there in the works. And the Gillette one, I got to say that I came in at the tail end. I don't think I was chairman, Dennis. I wasn't. I just want to make that clear too. So, you know, my hands are clean on that one. But I did sit through a couple of the meetings, and we did talk about this. And Dennis was adamantly opposed to it, and I think we did a disservice to Mr. Gillette and with some of the comments that he brought for us by the Snowmobile Club. And as much as I don't want to see the county taxpayers pay the money, I think, you know, we knew this was coming, and we should have ended it a couple years earlier than carrying on with this. So those are a couple things. I mean, I'm sick of the Lake George regional planning thing. I think they have good intentions, but boy, you know, I'm almost wondering if this isn't a piggy bank for elected officials. Well, that's what I'm going to say on that one.
Supervisor Thomas.
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily condone the loan fund that the planning board has. I would bring to the board's attention that that the planning board is an umbrella organization for the Adirondack Glens Falls Transportation Council, a municipal planning organization. And that organization applies for grants, considerable amount of money for Warren, Washington, and the upper part of Saratoga. And that is underneath the planning board, the regional planning board. And the Transportation Council cannot contract for anything. All the contracts are through the planning board. And also, the other organization that's in there is the Lake Champlain Basin Program, which provides a lot of environmental funding for the Lake Champlain watershed area. So I would just bring that to everyone's attention, and I believe that part of that $7,000 goes to support these two organizations or support the umbrella.
It does.
Mr.
Supervisor Dickinson.
I said this before, and I'm going to say here to Supervisor Thomas. My dealings with them have always been through the planning department, and we've done a lot of really good works for them. I'll be truthfully, I didn't realize they were loaning out money. I had no idea. But I'll tell you from my personal experiences on sitting on one of the county boards, which I sat on endured for a year, and then asked politely to be removed from. When you're on an organization that loans money to businesses and people who can't get it from a bank, you get after for trouble. It's going to happen. There's a reason why the banks don't give them money. And I think we got a couple of those organizations here. This seems to be one of them. I didn't realize they were giving out.
All right. Any discussion on any?
Mr. Chairman, at the end of the day, just not to redo what I said previously, well, let's try to get through these loans, and let's open the portfolio. Let's move it along, and let's get it off the table.
That was my message to Mr. Young. And I think we should envelop them like we do all our organizations. They should come in regularly. They should present, when the financials are done, they should come in and present their financials, of course. And so another hand, is this on 200, Claudia?
It is on 200. I just wanted to say I agree with Supervisor Garrity, and it seems like what are we doing? Why not fold them into the LDC or the our own planning department for some of those functions, and make sure that the Glens Falls Adirondack Regional Transportation Council has some sort of umbrella organization. Maybe not the planning board.
Supervisor Thomas?
I think it's because it's a regional organization, like the MPO. There's like 10 or 11 MPOs in New York State, so it's a regional, it's multi-county. I think that's one impediment to doing it.
I'm going to say I still have the floor. Did you want to go, Gary?
I just say, Frank, I understand your concerns about Glens Falls Transportation. They are concerned, too, because they don't want to be dragged into this
Well, if you ride buses, you might be concerned. I don't know.
No, they're concerned about where their funding's coming from now, because they have spoken to me off the record on that.
Any other discussions on 200? Mr. Beatty?
Yeah, just by all these supervisors having different points of, well, most of us actually concur, indicates how little we really know about the workings of the Lake George, Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board. We don't know about their development corporations that they set up. At least I don't. I can't tell if they hand out loans or if they don't. We know this, though. We know that we are one of 5 counties that have oversight over this planning board. We know that some members of our own board are on their board that didn't even know they were on their board or never went to a meeting. So I can go on and on and on, and not that I know more than anybody else in here, but the fact that we know so little about something that we are in charge of overseeing, and that they're handing out millions of dollars in loans, scares the heck out of me. We should, and should have been brought up before, probably. I think the fact that Mr. Decker, and he's under alleged fraud implications, we had a person named Mr. Tessier representing Warren County, who wrote the check to Mr. Decker. That's astounding to me. He is a member of the Lake George Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board, representing Warren County. He wrote the check to Mr. Decker. Now, I don't know where that's going to go, but that should concern everybody in this room. And if anybody votes to think that we shouldn't rescind that resolution, I don't know what to say to you. But we have potential liability on a number of fronts, and the fact that they have probably have done some good things, and I believe that. I believe they've done some good things, but I also believe they've done some very questionable things that may turn out to be even further than questionable. So we'll see where that goes. We'll let the police do their thing. We'll let everybody do their jobs. But we as a board, I will be shocked if we don't have 20 out of 20 supervisors vote, well, 19 out of 20, 21 will rescind themselves, they'll vote not to rescind this resolution. So.
Supervisor Wild.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one additional comment regarding this organization. Years ago, we entered into an agreement that we covered their employee payroll and benefits and were reimbursed. Now that the county's self-insured, I don't know how they can reimburse us if someone has a major accident, if there's major surgery involved with something. So I think we need to go in deeper in terms of the whole relationship with this board as well as other boards, because if we are totally engrossed in supporting them from an employee standpoint, we are now totally liable. So I don't think that was the intent of the original agreement that we had, but it's something else that I suggest that we look into as we go forward.
We will. Supervisor Dickinson.
Nobody else raised their hand, so I got up by default.
No, the rules say you need to call on everyone before you return to someone.
I am very concerned. Lake George, Bolton, and the Glens Falls area, Queensbury area depend heavily on Glens Falls Transit. They are gearing up now for the coming summer season. They move a lot of employees as well as tourists. So this is a serious ramification of what we're doing here today. If we're going to do this, we need to be ready to respond quickly to how we're going to salvage the Glens Falls Transit. Because we definitely need it. We're not, we're going to be shooting ourselves in the foot, if not the head.
Supervisor Loeb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering, we're talking about $7,000, putting it on hold, at least for the short run, if not permanently, but $7,000 is not going to make or break any of the organizations that we're dealing with in this county.
And as you know, the invoice has been held since the last meeting, so the cash hasn't flowed anyway. But I think there's clearly the resolution, there's a message here, which I think is part of the intent of the resolution, Mr. Beatty's intent, as he's indicated to me. And so, any other discussion on 200? Discussion on other, then I'll close, Mr. Loeb.
Not on 200.
Okay, I'll be right there. So I'll close discussion on resolution 200. Other resolutions. Supervisor Loeb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 156, which I asked for a roll call vote. In researching it further, I understand that Supervisor Simpson's committee, of which I am a member, maybe not, but that there is, because I don't remember this being discussed. But my concern is this is a lot of money to make measurements in a river in 2018 when we could simply put an instrument in the water and walk away, and the computers, everything, all the answers would be happening automatically. So I understand that someone in the county is looking into the automation process. So while this may go through, I will symbolically vote against it, just to let whoever know that this cannot go on.
All right, so we have had a roll call on 156. Supervisor Simpson on 156?
Yes, that's actually Supervisor Leggett's committee, but I think I raised the issue about that in committee. I didn't know if I could speak on that, or is it okay if I...
Right at the moment,
okay.
The floor is yours.
I had questioned if there's an existing, equipment there. And this data is very important to, flood warning, especially for falls. I had asked, is that the right place? We're looking at other monitors in other places, and the importance of this data. So that was a question. Those were the questions that I had raised. But it was actually Supervisor Leggett's committee.
That's me. Thank you.
Would you like to speak, Supervisor Leggett?
And to clarify, and I'll ask Director LaFleur to correct me if I am wrong on this. We are in contract with USGS, and for services, they'd like to increase it by about $2,000 for the rest of the contract year. So that's what we're looking at under this resolution, is to appropriate $3,000 more for this ongoing contract we have with them. And I'm sure that there are discussions going on how to create more efficiency on the data collection.
All right. And perhaps in committee you could task Brian to have those discussions with USGS so that we can identify if the idea that Supervisor Loeb has is in fact a doable option. Thank you. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on 156? No discussion. I'll close discussion on 156. Discussion on other resolutions. Supervisor Molino.
My comments are not on a discussion or on a resolution, but it's something that was mentioned here about the railroad. I've been working with the railroad since 94, 95. I got a lot of time into it. But the one thing that I'm a little upset about, and I agree with everybody, that we're having problems, we got to take care of it. But even in the paper, between the oil cars and everything else that went on, it has yet to be mentioned that since 2011 this railroad was running, they've turned over $602,160 to this county in payment of ticket sales and things. So the county has made money on this railroad. Yes, they owe $27,000 for October, November, and December, and another $1,672 for January. But it's, I'm just trying to bring that up, that it's not everything that went wrong with the railroad and all the stuff that everybody wants to get rid of. I'm getting calls now from people, bike trails and snowmobile trails, and rip them up. But I just want everybody to understand that most of the people that's on this board now really weren't around when this started. And this railroad did give us over $600,000. So that $27,000, yes, it's important, but this is what started the big fury that they're not paying, that breach of contract and everything else. So I still hope there's a little 5% chance that we can work out something, even to finish out this contract with this company. Because it's not that they didn't do anything for the county. They maintained the tracks. They even got a grant for, I'm not sure, it's $80,000 or $90,000 to fix all the signals on the roads. Didn't cost us any money. They took care of the signals. They took care of putting them up. So I think they did a lot. They paid all the insurances and all the repairs. So I can understand their point that they're losing money and they needed help. But I just wanted to bring this up.
Yeah, this is apart from the agenda, but it's an important topic. So I think without objection, I think I'll allow a couple more comments. Supervisor Thomas?
Yes, to follow up with Mr. Molino, there's also about $460,000 or $470,000 worth of match to grants that have been awarded to various communities throughout the county. And the match is provided by the work that the railroad did maintaining the tracks. So you can add another 450,000.
Supervisor Simpson.
I was gonna say what Supervisor Thomas said. There are a lot of moving pieces with this, and I think that's why we need to take our time. We need to know all the information before anybody takes any actions anywhere. I think we need legal advice. We need everybody on the same page and knowing all the facts, all the information, so that we do know which way we're moving forward and we're all in sync. So, thank you.
Alrighty. Discussion on other resolutions. Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, this is not in regards to a specific resolution, but it's a closure for a discussion we had earlier about litigation against the county. And I'd like to request through you to our county attorney, county administrator, and I believe it might be Supervisor Loeb, who chairs the committee, to see if we can get a listing of all the current litigation that is against the county.
Of course,
and
we
with
can
a little
provide
summary, so
Of
we
course.
can get a stats.
Of course.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I saw a hand. Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks. On Reso 192, I did want to bring up, I'm concerned about our children's safety. I have 2 young children. They go to the Glens Falls School District. So, I've been communicating with the superintendent there. I don't have kids in the Hadley Luzerne School. I don't know what they're doing as far as their comprehensive security plan. Glens Falls has been working on that for years. They're looking at it. They're working on doing the best they can. And I don't know. I'm very conflicted about whether or not we should have armed resource officers in our schools. So I wanted to put that on the table. But from my perspective here at the county, we should make sure that the county is getting, being made whole with respect to the costs that are going to be incurred for these resource officers. And the $60,000 that we're putting in this contract, as we talked about in committee, isn't going to cover the officers' weapons, their uniforms, their training, and insurance costs. Not their health insurance necessarily, but their liability insurance that would be covered through the county. So I think that this, if the county wants to go forward and help them out here, they've made that decision that they want to do this. I'm not going to oppose it, but I do like the idea that we can get out of this contract at any time. I think the county attorney is putting in some termination clause, so that will be good for us. If these costs start escalating, or for some other reason the sheriff's office doesn't think we can continue in this manner with only getting $60,000, I'd like the county to be able to get out of the contract as needed, setting aside my other concerns about armed officers.
That was discussion on 192. Any other discussion on 192? No more discussion on 192.
I'm conflicted about the gun issue also, but at the end of the day, I think we have to leave it up to each individual school district to ultimately make their own decision. So I'm conflicted, but at the same time, it's really their decision to make.
Very good. Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks. Just one more. On 196, I wanted to ask for the board support for Beth McLaughlin and also for Mr. Van Ness, that they be reappointed. I think they're doing a great job, both of you, and I really appreciate your professionalism and your objectivity to very sensitive political matters. Thank you, both.
I'll close discussion then on 192. Any further discussion on 196? Okay, then I'll close discussion on 196. Discussion on other resolutions. There being none, we will move to voting on resolutions.
Resolution 151, making supplemental appropriations. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 152, amending Warren County budget for 2018. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan? Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Excuse me. Resolution 156, amending Resolution 290 of 2015, which authorized contract with United States Geological Survey. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
No.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 161, authorizing a memorandum of understanding with Leanne Dorman to facilitate a program to reduce recidivism for girls under the probation supervision in Warren County. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 172, opposing the proposed New York State Department of Labor call-in pay proposed regulations. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Absolutely.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
No.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 173, opposing proposed elimination of the minimum wage tip credit. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Abstain.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
No.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 183, appointing members of the Traffic Safety Board. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Abstain.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 186, amending table of organization in Warren County Salary and Compensation Plan. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 188, authorizing appropriation of funds from Westmount Legacy Reserve Fund. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braman?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 190, authorizing county treasurer to transfer funds from computer reserve fund. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 191, authorizing appropriation of funds from deferred revenue Gaslight Village parking fees. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Molino,
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 194, authorizing appropriation of funds from the general fund unappropriated surplus to the Public Works budget. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Molino,
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 195, approving settlement in the matter of New York Municipal Insurance Reciprocal and Selective Insurance Company of America, and authorizing transfer of funds. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Molino,
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 199, authorizing appropriation of funds from the occupancy tax reserve to the tourism budget. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Molino,
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 200, rescinding Resolution 133 of 2018, authorizing payment to the Lake Champlain Lake George Regional Planning Board. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
That'd be a reserved yes.
Mr. Molino,
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
I'm going to recuse. I believe that I was appointed to the board, even though I never asked to be, but I was appointed, and the communication never happened, so I don't know if that fact ever happened. But given the sensitivity and the nature of this, I'm going to recuse.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Definitely yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Abstain.
Mr. Thomas?
In support of the other two organizations, I'm going to vote no.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Chairman,
Mr. Dickinson?
am I on that board? Did you appoint me to that board?
You are appointed to that board.
Then I'd like to change my vote.
You'd like to recuse yourself?
I certainly would.
Mr. Dickinson? All right, very good. Ms. Frazier?
Well, apparently I'm on the board. I've never I've never been to a meeting, but I would then recuse myself.
Right. Well, let me ask the question, because as chairman of the county, I'm automatically on the board, but I don't believe as an appointee of the board, I don't believe I'm required to recuse myself. So I'll keep my vote as in support of the resolution.
Is there anyone else in the room that knows whether they're on or not on the board?
I believe the treasurer may or may not, but he's not here at the moment. Alrighty, we'll have a vote on the collective. I have a motion to approve the balance. Mr. Dickinson, Ms. Bramer, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Privilege of the floor.
Bye,
Is there-
Kevin.
Is there anyone in the audience who wishes? Fred, now's your time.
I will be brief. Try to. I was a member of the Regional Planning Board for 30 years by state law. The state law says the highway superintendent, which was part of my job for 30 years here, the county treasurer, John Wertheim and I were two of the regular attendees at all the meetings, are by state law, you're a member of any regional planning board if you're one of the however many counties are in it. The rest are appointed by the county board. That was beyond our purview to worry about. I was more than 16, 17 years ago that I retired from the 30 years, so But I did ask if that was still part of the law, and it is. Your new county highway superintendent will be a member of the Regional Planning Board by law. That was, the loan fund was separate from a huge amount of things the Regional Planning Board do. Huge. That was an easy one. That was federal money, no county money, no state money. There was a fund of federal money, and all I can remember was it came out of a white building down in Philadelphia. And the director would ask for money, and all the planning boards got it, and it was part of the federal budget that they got it. Okay? What could you use it for? It was literally, we always call it the loan of last resort. If you walked in and said, I need a bridge loan to stay open this winter, I'll pay you back in July for $50,000. All this time I thought Dennis didn't have a microphone. It comes off. The first thing the director will ask you was, can you get money anywhere? And the answer was always no. Okay, we need certification from a bank that you do business with, or legitimate certification that you cannot borrow any money from anybody. And that was the first piece of paper you got. Then you talk with them. Then what do you have for collateral? And we'll come back to that as I finish this thing up, hopefully briefly. And if you had collateral, we had people take out a second mortgage on their house so he could open up a diner or a restaurant. And he ended up losing his house to the mortgage because he ended up not having a successful restaurant. But you had, so it's not, who is this money from? It's from the federal government. You get it, it's there, it's in the budget. You can spend it around your county. Okay? Now there was also always a supervisor that was on our board. At least one from the county board, always. And there was always a supervisor from the other 4 counties. The guy from Plattsburgh didn't come down all the time, but the treasurer did quite often. So that was the control. That was the group that said, okay, now they would look at the request for the loan, and if they were certified to not be able to borrow money anywhere, and that was the legitimate check, okay, and you've got collateral, yes, okay. Now there was political doings on a couple of things. I recall the big NIMO building down off Dix Avenue and Quaker Road, when they left, and there was this big vacant building, and a fellow from Glens Falls decided he was going to manufacture ski clothes and that sort of thing there.
B.B.
Bond. Bond, right. That was funded through a whole bunch of loans. Had a call from the congressional office saying, you guys got to come up with a number. I'm going to guess. This is back 25 years ago now. 125,000's got to be loaned out by the Regional Planning Board. Well, it's federal money. It's federal. This. You say, okay. We had the money there to loan out, and we did, along with a whole bunch of other people. And he went broke. And I still recall having a long talk with the attorney for the Regional Planning Board about, you want me to go down and I sign as treasurer that that's an uncollectible loan, whatever, and that becomes part of his bankruptcy or whatever. And on the advice of the attorney of the Regional Planning Board, I went down and signed off a loan for $100,000 to $200,000. And all the rest of the loans went Dixie. That is one real weird end loan that it became involved in. My favorite one was a neighboring county. A supervisor came in, had a young lady who had a little store of sorts, and she wanted to buy a pizza oven, and she had no money, and she wanted, I don't know, $300-400 to borrow it. and she couldn't get any money anywhere. So she asked for a loan. And they said, well, what do you have for collateral? And she said, nothing. I don't have anything. She said, well, I got a horse. So we took her horse as collateral on about a $300 or $400 loan.
Right.
And after I left, I found out the horse died. So that's the scope of what this fund does. You need money badly. You can't get it anywhere. It's going to cost a bunch of jobs. A bridge loan. Oh, that's a big corporation. Yeah, but they don't have enough money to stay running this winter. They'll ready to go next year. That's what this loan is all about. It's the loan of last resort. It's not a normal, quote-unquote, normal loan. Thank you.
You're welcome, Fred. Mr. Whitehead?
Thank you. I don't know a whole lot about the Regional Planning Board. I'd like to know more. But I do know enough that, I believe Mr. Thomas and other people, that when they've said that they do a lot of good work, I believe that's true. But, the fact that you do spend 75% of your money on good things doesn't take away your responsibilities for the other 25%. And if that other 25% happens to come from the federal government, not your individual budgets, that doesn't take away your responsibility either to make sure that taxpayer money is being well spent. So I am glad that we're continuing to ask questions. We'll continue to get answers. And, at some point in time, we'll be making the right decision. So that's all good. Now, the next thing I'd like to do is to apologize to Mr. Supervisor Sokol that he has become collateral damage in my attempts to bring some of these concerns forward. It's not my intention to go ahead and point at him, but it has served its purpose, and it's unfortunate that Mr. Sokol got caught up in it. But I'm going to do the same thing to him right now. Because, and again, this is not against Mr. Sokol or the decision in the Ethics Board the other day. I'll not comment on that, but I'll comment on the process. And the process to me was disgusting. There was no agenda for that meeting. It was difficult to know that there was a meeting. We went there. We were talking about one case, and then they went into executive session. And while I wasn't there, when we came back, because I had other things to do, they talked about that, a conclusion on another case as well. I don't know, nobody on the first case, we all were sitting there, we all heard, public testimony for and against, a certain situation. We heard absolutely nothing on the second thing, except a decision. But the only people in that room, one of them was the county attorney who had already issued an opinion, the same opinion that the board ended up coming back with. I don't know who prosecuted that. I don't know how you can be both a defender and a prosecutor at the same time. I don't know, where any of this information came from. And if this is the best you can do to convince the people of Warren County that you care about ethics, that you have a long way to go. It's in my opinion. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? There being none, announcements. Mr. Straub, Supervisor Straub.
Yes, Wednesday I went to Elizabeth Miller's beautifully recreated Park Theater. And then the next day, on Thursday, I went to the beautiful and charming redone Queensbury Hotel. We had a Lake George Chamber CBB meeting chaired by Kristen Hannafin, who's working very hard to bring great events to the area. And I just had the thought, and last night I went to Sip and Canvas, and I don't think Picasso has anything to worry about. But my point is that under the leadership of Mayor Cleveland and now under Mayor Hall, I think the city has done a great thing. It shows that when we work together, we can accomplish great things. So I think the theme is working together. And my last comment is that Sunday, Earth Day is going to be held and celebrated And again, downtown Glens Falls. So that's Sunday. Thank you.
Did you mean Supervisor Diamond?
Yes. What did I say?
You brought back Mayor Cleveland.
Oh.
Remember Mayor.
Was that Grover?
I think too much of the sip and dip over there, but that's just my opinion.
Well, Doug, you might be right about that, and I'm sorry. Mayor Diamond.
I'd like to
You're
propose
welcome.
he never be involved
You're
in
welcome.
sipping.
Other announcements, Supervisor Bailey.
The Ben Osborne will be having a fundraiser. I don't have the exact date, but it's early May, and I think everybody knows the Ben Osborne Fund and what they do. Not only getting books, but now he's expanding and helping kids. He does it 100% volunteer. There's not one dime, one nickel that goes to administrative. So if you want to get behind a fund, and it's the 11th?
May 11th.
May 11th. Thank you, Mr. Simpson. I would suggest we get involved with that. Thank you.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. I appreciate Supervisor Stroud being a champion for downtown Glens Falls. He stole my thunder on the Earth Day celebration, which is Sunday at noon in City Park, and it will be a soft launch for the Solarize campaign that Glens Falls and Queensbury are participating in together. So if you are looking to do solar panels on your house, this summer is the time to do it. You'll get really good discounts through the combined efforts of the town and the city.
Supervisor Hogan.
Quickly, promise. First weekend in May, Hudson River Whitewater Derby and the northernmost river keeper sweep. So if you have some spare time, come on up and help us clean up the river and attend our big event. Thank you.
I was in it once. I think the canoe's still up there. I remember floating under the bridge. No, the canoe, I'm not sure what happened to that canoe.
Wrapped around a rock under the water.
I think that's exactly what happened. But, Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairman. Wednesday night I was at the Adirondack Thunder hockey game. They have a game. Hopefully they will finish off first round of the playoffs tomorrow night, beginning at 7 o'clock. I was sitting with my wife, and she turned to me and she said, "So when did we start sitting in the elected officials section?" There were a number of individuals here in our section. A number of years ago, Mayor Akins and then Mayor Diamond appointed me to be the contract administrator at the Civic Center, basically overseeing the operations there, and I thank them for their trust in me. Warren County has always has a proud history of being in support of the Civic Center. I think recently I think it was last month, we saw a report of that investment. And again, as a resident of the city and someone who attends a lot of events at the Civic Center, I thank the county and thank them for their continued support of that. And if you want some good entertainment and are available again tomorrow night, there's still tickets to the Thunder hockey game. Thank you.
Any other announcements?
Just, there is an ad in the Chronicle for the fundraiser. Thank you, Mr. Simpson. It's going to be at another Glens Falls, the Queensbury Hotel, on the 11th, and it's a live auction, and it's baskets for Ben. He's been doing it for a number of years. And again, it's $20 to get in, I guess, but you get hors d'oeuvres, and I believe, I don't know about the wine, Mr. Stroud, but I know that they'll have the entertainment and so forth. So, unbelievable cause. I know I'm going on with that, but that's something to really get behind. Thank you.
Chair, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Simpson, Ms.
Have
Bramer on...
We voted on the collective.
Yeah, we did.
Yes, we have.
Yes, Billy.
Are you...
You missed it. Okay,
do you wish to know how you voted? You can check with the staff afterwards. I believe that was Ms. Bramer on the second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.